Hey guys, so this will be your first little review lesson for Spanish 2. The first month or so that we have of school is going to be reviewing what we covered, or you and your respective teacher, if you didn't have me last year, covered in Spanish 1. So we're going to kind of go through. We're not learning this for the first time. We're all just kind of reviewing because you guys did have this all last year. So for right now, we're starting pretty much back to that first chapter that you had. So like siempre eliminar, it was like the conversation one. You guys should also have your books by now. So if you do have your book, I suggest you open because as you can see, my screen's going to be kind of small for you guys to be able to see everything. Starting on this review page, it's page 25. There was a few like class directions or textbook directions that you could see. I want to say it was page 22 and 23. I'm not so sure. I'll go back in a few minutes. But you're going to need those pages as well. But I'm just starting on this one because it kind of had all the questions that you guys should remember. So if you remember, this chapter focused on starting conversations, introducing yourself to somebody new, or introducing somebody new to the conversation, to like a friend that you were with. You also learned how to ask a few basic questions, how to ask someone what their name is, what their phone number is, where they're from, and to ask general questions like who is that person, or like what is the weather, or what day is it today, kind of basic questions you guys learned how to ask. So this page has all of that information. If you notice, we have our greetings over here in the top. They're separated by the categories. So you have the greetings, you have ways you can say goodbye, and if you remember, we have buenas noches. That could be like a good evening or a good night, and it can be used as a greeting for someone, like a good evening, how are you, and a goodbye if you're actually saying goodbye to somebody as well. So you have all of those here. You have a bunch of the questions, and something to remember is that there are two versions for pretty much every question. One of them will be the formal version, so the version that you're going to be using in a more professional setting, or a more respectful, or polite form. So that'd be like using usted. So people you're not really familiar with, or people that you just don't know very well yet, or people that are older or have are authority figures pretty much. So you have on here in the page also the formal versions and the informal, also known as familial, which is what they have in the book. But they have both versions on here. And that's basically for all question forms. You have a few other responses that you can respond to based on when someone asks you how you're feeling. You have a few of the questions that you most likely will be using when you make introductions. You guys will also have a few assignments that focus on using this vocab. There is a little comic strip that you guys will do where like you have a pretend conversation with characters that you create, and you're going to be using these questions for that. So you have a bunch of different ways you can respond to these questions. If it's like a pleasure to meet you, or delighted to meet you, or nice to meet you, it's all basically mean the same thing. But just like in English, we have all those versions. You have all those versions in Spanish. This chapter also covered days, or like the week. And you have to remember that for days and also months, even though we did that later in the year, you do not capitalize them. So as you guys go through this information, and it gives you extra help here that you have full days of the week on page 18, they will not be capitalized. And it's not a typo, that's just how it is. We have some more questions. You also had numbers. You can find them on page 16. And you had questions of asking someone what their phone number is. And again, you have two versions of the familial, like informal question, and then the formal question as well. So you actually have both of them in the same one here. A few basic other words and phrases we have to know, especially when it comes to like class directions or book directions that you'll be seeing or saying pretty much every day. You have a bunch of them here. Basically, like the Mr. and Mrs. that you'll most likely be using when it comes to your classes. You also have some weather, and if you remember, there are two that do not have the ase in front of them. The only two, because they have the ing spellings, are two for raining, which is llueve, and snowing, which is nieva. So all the others do have ase in front, but then these two do not. So you have to remember that those two are different. They don't follow the same pattern. Lastly, we have asking where somebody is from, or you telling somebody where you are from. So either asking the question or answering that question. And we also had a lot of countries that we focused on. Those are also found on page 13. That was the page with the giant map. You have both versions of how you can ask someone where they are from here. and then the one version pretty much that you answer where you're from. Or if you know the answer and you want to say that that person is from somewhere, you have the way to answer that here too with es de. So this is the main vocab page. I'm going to go back here really quick. You guys did have a section on, here we go. So that's the second one. You did have a section on just like class rules, instructions that you're most likely going to be hearing. So here we had, what page was this? Page 22. Okay, so on page 22, you had a section just on directions for class. And this is going to be still something that you use, although some of them might not be as common. For example, I think we have to sit down here. So it's like some of these, at least during online learning, you won't really be listening to or hearing us use too much, but just things you need to know because they'll pop up in some of the work that we do anyways. But these are basically directions that you would hear or you might have to use yourself when it comes to in-class work. Basic things of like opening books, closing books, asking questions of like how do you say something or how do you spell something, me asking you guys if you understand something or to raise your hand if I'm speaking too quickly, because I tend to do that, you guys telling me to slow down please, or if you don't know something and all you had to say no sé, I don't know. So these are just kind of basic phrases that you'll come across in a classroom. And then similarly, I'm gonna go back. Page 23 had the same idea, but this time it was focused on like directions and phrases you hear, or you'll read, I should say, in the textbook. So conversations, or if you're working on things like completing a conversation, filling in blanks, choosing the right words or the right answer in general, reading, writing, explaining, working with other students. So it's just like directions you'll most likely hear also in the classroom, but in the textbook too. So these three separate pages, page 22, page 23, and page 25, have the vocab for that entire first chapter you did in Spanish 1, which was like a month or so. So we're going to review that with the work that we do for this week. We're going to pretty much try to go in order and do like a unit a week, because that's kind of what we need to do in order to get everything else done. And especially because last year was kind of odd at the end of the year, we need to make sure that we really cover what that last fourth quarter was for you guys last year, because you're still expected to know all of that. So this is just the first one. I'm still going to go over this when we have our own class, like our Zoom meetings, and of course the work that we do throughout there, but I'll leave this video up on our little class YouTube so you guys can come back and double check something, or if you just don't have your book with you and you want to take a look at what these things are, then you have it in there too. So I'll stop this one here. We'll do the next one for you guys, which will be Unit 1, Lesson 1, and I'll call them this so you know exactly which chapter you're looking for. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one.